Inter Miami's climb up the Eastern Conference standings continued this past weekend thanks to a strong defensive performance that included a rare set-piece goal. Hello everybody, welcome back to Miami Total Football Radio, the number one and yes, most listened to Inter Miami podcast, providing you all the latest news, updates, analysis, opinions, inside information, general punditry, and much, much more. We also go by the name of Miami Total Football Radio, and we are so happy you are joining us for this week's show. Yes, once again, we are dropping the pod earlier in the week as we used to do before a certain stretch where things started to, or a schedule started to change and we had to drop it later in the week. Trying to get back on a consistent path, an Inter Miami-like path of dropping the pods earlier in the week. So hopefully this is the beginning of that trend. My name is Franco Panizo. I am 1/3 of your hosting team. And yes, it's 1/3 and not 1/4 because Steve El Primo Brenner is still not in the house, but he is okay. He called me last week, and the legendary enigma that is El Primo had returned to the United States from the assignment he was on, but he was off to Washington, D.C. when he called me. But he was off to Washington, D.C., because he's reporting and pursuing I don't want to say it's not a murder trial or it's not a murder development, but there was a passing of someone, not has nothing to do with soccer, nothing to do with football, but someone passed and he's been assigned to go find out if it was a murder. So the enigma that is Steve El Primo Brenner is away for another week or two, but he has promised me that he will be back in short order before the season ends, hopefully, is what I'm hoping for. But anyway, you already heard the voice of one of our other two co-hosts. That is, of course, Island Jose, a.k.a. Jose Armando, and you haven't heard from her yet, but Andrea Yanez, a.k.a. Ajicita. We'll start with you, Jose, since we heard your voice already. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I think, we're going to have a pretty exciting ending to the regular season. I've heard some of the I've read, I should say, some of the messages, so I know there's people waiting on whether Miami is a playoff team or looks like a playoff team now. So yeah, I'm very excited about the pod. I'm excited to talk about Harvey because I already know he's getting a lot of bad press, and so I'm here to tell you all the truth about Harvey Neville.
The truth.
So I'm happy. I'm good.
Okay, you've piqued my interest with the truth. The truth. Okay, bueno. Andrea, a.k.a. the beloved fan favorite Ajicita, how are you doing today?
Hi, guys. Nice to be here to talk about Inter Miami. I know Jose and I have been called out by name because fans are angry that we think that Inter Miami is not a playoff team. We're going to discuss a little bit of that. We're going to talk about Harvey Neville because we are accused also, we stand trial because we are accused of favoring Harvey Neville in front of some other players, some other talents of the team. So we're going to set the record straight. We're going to have fun, and we're going to talk about Inter Miami.
So we will talk about Inter Miami, of course, and their most recent victory against Toronto FC. We will also talk about, as you guys mentioned, Harvey Neville, who, yes, is Phil Neville's son, but he is on the first team now. He has officially received his green card and signed a first team deal, which, as Jose alluded to, has prompted more comments of nepotism. So we will dive into that. Of course, we will preview this weekend's upcoming game against the New York Red Bulls, which we'll see Inter Miami face off against Lewis Morgan once again. And we'll touch on other topics regarding the team before doing our Q&A session and our final thoughts at the very end. So we've got a lot to talk about. Let's get to it. Okay, guys, so Inter Miami was at home this past Saturday at DraftKings Stadium in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and they posted a 2-1 victory over, I don't know if Red Hot Toronto FC, but hot-ish Toronto FC. Jean Mota scored in the 24th minute. Lorenzo Insignia tied the game up 4 minutes later, but Ariel Lassiter gets on the end of a well-worked set piece and scores from in close in the 44th. Just before halftime, that proves to be enough for Inter Miami on the day. This was the starting lineup in a 4-2-3-1 formation. Yes, the graphic designer, the Inter Miami graphic designer, he or she fooled us once again with that pre-game lineup graphic that looked like they were going to play a 3... What was it? What did they have? A 3-4-3? I think it was a 3-4-3. But they definitely didn't have the 4-2-3-1. But this was Inter Miami's actual lineup in the game. Drake Callender in goal. Your back line from right to left. DeAndre Yedlin, Damian Lowe, Ryan Saylor, Christopher McVeigh. The first line of the midfield, the Brazilian duo of Gregory and Jean Mota. The second line of the midfield, Robert Taylor, Alejandro Pozuelo, and Ariel Lassiter. That's from right to left. And up top, by his lonesome, Gonzalo Higuain. Jose, we'll start with you. What were your thoughts on this victory for Inter Miami? A game in which they didn't play their best soccer. And something Phil Neville noted after the game, and he was honest about it and straightforward. They didn't play pretty good soccer compared to some of the most recent matches that they've put forth. But they were able to get it done despite that. They found a way to win this game in spite of not playing well. So, your thoughts on this victory against, again, a Toronto FC team that had been scoring goals, that had the Italian imports, Lorenzo Insignia and Federico Bernardeschi. So, your thoughts?
Well, I thought, listen, it's a great result for Inter Miami. I mean, this is one of the most important games of the season so far for them, just because, you were able to create some breathing room between yourself and Toronto. I would say this. I wouldn't get overly excited about being in a playoff position. I think it's a great result. And again, one of the most important results of the year so far for Inter Miami, because you gain confidence, you take a step forward in terms of solidifying that home field advantage, which I think they have been able to do a pretty good job. I think you took advantage of the mistakes, and there's the credit that I want to give Inter Miami, because the first goal, as much as you want to say, oh, Jean Mota, what a shot, that's on the goalkeeper.
Absolutely.
That's on the
100%,
goalkeeper.
100%.
There's that's on the goalkeeper. So you need to take advantage of those mistakes, and they were able to do that. But don't get overly excited about this, because, yes, you were in fifth place, but you were 2 points away from being far away from the playoffs. I mean, in the, ninth place, 10th place. The window is so tight in the last two or three spots for the playoffs. It's so tight. You cannot get overly excited about being 2 points above, or you cannot get overly dramatic if you're 2 points behind. So I think it's a great result, a must win, and they were able to accomplish that. Listen, at this point, it doesn't really matter if they played wonderful soccer. It only matters if they win, because of what happened early in the season. If they win, if they get 3 points, you move on, you try to get better. If the next game it happens the same, they're not playing at a high level, but you get 3 points, so be it. That's all you need. If you play a great brand of soccer and you end up with draws or end up losing games with moral victories, that's not going to take you to the playoffs.
So I don't agree with you listen, I agree with you that you shouldn't get overly excited, but if you're an Inter Miami fan, I think with just reason you should be excited, because the team continues to climb the Eastern Conference standings. And now they finished that night, Saturday night, in 5th place. After Saturday's results, Inter Miami dropped to 6th place. So Inter Miami currently is in 6th place with 36 points. Columbus Crew, with a game in hand, are on 35. In 7th, obviously, and then in 8th and 9th, you have New England and Cincinnati with 34 apiece. Charlotte's in 10th, 32. Toronto has 30 in the 11th place spot. So, yes, it is still tight. There's still plenty of likely changes that we'll see in the standings, but for Inter Miami to be where it's at now compared to where it was a few weeks ago and definitely earlier in the year, I think there's reason for excitement there. They're in it. They're in it. Jose, we had said, you and I at the start of the season, that we did not think Inter Miami was a playoff team. Even you, up until last week, when I said they're starting to look like a playoff team, you said, No. Andrea also.
I can say it again if you want. I can say it again.
So you still don't think they wait. So you still don't think they look like a playoff team? You still don't think they look like a playoff team?
Let us say it again. Look, they won. This is an important win against Toronto that leaves them with 6. That is why we called it a 6-point game, because it left them to 6 points difference with Toronto. But you have to be real. We are not here to tell you what you want to hear. We're here to tell you the reality. Yes, Inter Miami is doing a lot better, getting everyone excited. That is true. But that doesn't mean that they are going to the playoffs. That means that they are fighting, that they have a chance to go to the playoffs, like Phil and the players are sharing with everyone. But that doesn't mean that they are already qualified. That doesn't mean that we're getting a playoff game here in Fort Lauderdale. So,
but this is only normal with Inter Miami this year. It's a chain of overreaction every single time something positive happens.
Yes, so
Campana came on and scored 2 goals. Oh my goodness, we have to sign Campana. He's gonna go to the World Cup, win the Golden Boot, the next big thing of the world, the number 9. Huge overreaction when it came to Campana.
And also with Higuain. Higuain needs to retire. Right. Higuain is done. He's washed. He's a has-been. And we always fought that here. I don't want to name names.
No, you're not pointing any fingers over there. You're not pointing fingers.
I'm doing the podcast, but I am new, but I am old enough to remember that we've had that fight many times here. That is true.
and there's one more thing. It happens as well on the negative side. If they end up losing 2 matches, then Phil needs to go. This is the worst team ever. This is horrible. We have nothing here. It's the overreaction is incredible when it comes to this team. And that's why I'm telling you guys here, it's good. It's very good. But don't get overly excited because you are in 5th place for 12 hours. It doesn't mean you really are the 5th best team in the East.
And you depend to go to a playoffs. You depend on winning your games, but you depend also on the results because, like Franco just said, Orlando is 5th with the same amount of points, but with a better goal difference. But then Columbus and Cincinnati and New England are behind just by a point or 2. And better goal difference than Inter Miami.
Here we go again with the goal difference.
Here we go with the goal difference. And talking about the losses, Inter Miami has 10 wins, 6 draws, and 10 losses. So let's not just get carried into telling people that we're going to have a playoff game in Driving
Hold on. No one here on this podcast says Inter Miami is going to have a home game.
No, but we're talking about the media and fans getting excited. You have to take it step by step because you've been having good results after losing against New York City FC a couple of weeks ago. You had good results, even the tie with Cincinnati and Montreal. Those are considered good results because you have gotten points and they have brought you to the 6th place where you are now. But you are in 6th place only 2 and 1 point before your rivals who have better records than you. So if you tie against, it doesn't just depend on if you win every game.
Time out. Time out.
It depends on what the other team.
No, that's not true. That's not true. If Inter Miami wins the rest of their games, they're in the playoffs because of where they are right now in the standings. They're in 6th place. So if they win out, they're making the playoffs. So they control their own destiny just by sheer math. Okay, Jose. Okay,
that's not going to happen.
That's fine. I'm not saying it's going to happen, Jose. No, but you have to be technical because they are in control. You absolutely have to be technical because mathematically.
You think it would be fair to tell people that Inter Miami is going to go to the playoffs because they're going to win the rest of the games?
Jose, I didn't say they're going to win the rest of their games. Listen.
Jose,
you need a Q-tip.
Jose, you need a Q-tip. That is gonna be important.
Jose needs a Q-tip, guys, because I didn't say Inter Miami is going to win the rest of their games. I said if they win the rest of their games, they're in the playoffs because of where they stand in the table. If they were in 8th or 9th place and they if they won the rest of their games, then they would rely on other results because they would need other teams ahead of them to drop. So right now, they are in control of their own destiny. If they get enough points from these remaining 8 games,
what is Cincinnati
they're in the
wins all their
playoffs.
matches too?
Inter Miami's in the playoffs.
And Orlando wins all their matches.
If Inter Miami wins the rest of their games, which
no, Franco, it doesn't work like that.
Andrea,
No.
Inter Miami's ahead of Cincinnati in the table. So if Inter Miami wins the rest of their games and Cincinnati won the rest of the games,
they don't play against Cincinnati. They don't have that in hand like they do with Columbus.
Andrea, that's not the point. Andrea, if Inter Miami wins the rest of their games and Cincinnati wins the rest of their games, if they both won the next 8 games, they both had the same point total, Inter Miami would be above Cincinnati in the standings because they have more points than them right now. That's just basic math, Andrea. Basic math. So Columbus has a game. Columbus has a game in hand. 100%. 100%.
So how are you saying if Columbus wins all their games, they're going to the playoffs instead of Inter Miami?
No,
so
Inter Miami will drop to 7th. Inter Miami will drop to 7th. So
just to be clear,
okay.
7 go to the.
Anyway, something else I have to pick there, Andrea, is that you again brought up the negative goal differential. Last week you said, because Inter Miami's at -9, or they were at -9 last week, that they won't make it to the playoffs, that teams with negative goal differentials won't make it to the playoffs. There are now 2 teams, as of today, with negative goal differential in a playoff spot.
We are
in the
not
East.
in the playoffs.
Orlando City has -7. They're in 5th place. As of right now, Inter Miami has -8. And they're in 6th.
Only one team with a negative.
Hey, you were
goal
raving about New England, and they had a +2 goal differential, and then they got smacked, I believe, if I'm going off the top of my head here,
by Rommel Kyoto. Say it. By Rommel Kyoto.
Say it.
Inter Miami owes everything. Owes that 6th place to Rommel Kyoto.
I didn't know. Rommel Kyoto made up all of Montreal CF, but anyway, or CF Montreal. But anyway, New England lost 4-0 to CF Montreal. Rommel Kyoto with some goals in that one. And guess what? New England now has a -2 goal differential. The team that you were so enthusiastic about last week because they had a positive goal differential.
It's different because, listen, Inter Miami doesn't get their goal differentials better. You'll see, we're going to be talking about this here, and you'll see when the 7 teams that are going to the playoffs, you'll see that only one team will have a negative goal differential.
Okay, we'll see. I didn't know you have a crystal ball now. You can tell the future. Okay, listen. Let's get back. Let's get back to the game, Andrea.
Not be saying we win and we go, because if Columbus wins, if Cincinnati wins, then it's gonna be tied for Inter Miami.
No, Inter Miami would go ahead of Cincinnati. Andrea, you're definitely not paying attention to all the details here, or you're missing something, because if Inter Miami, Columbus, and Cincinnati all win out, let's just say they get the same point total, because I believe Inter Miami and Columbus play during this final stretch run of the season. Let's say Inter Miami, Columbus, and Cincinnati all get the same point total. I'm taking New England out of it since those are the 3 teams you mentioned. If they all get the same points from here to the end of the year, Columbus would pass Inter Miami because they have a game in hand. In theory, they would pass Inter Miami, but Cincinnati would not, because Cincinnati has less wins right now with the same amount of games played than Inter Miami. And that is the first tiebreaker, is wins. So Cincinnati would not pass Inter Miami if they got the same amount of points from here to the end of the year. Inter Miami would be above them. Now, you want to take New England into account. New England also has less wins, so you're going to throw them into the mix and say if they got the same amount of points as Inter Miami. But anyway, okay, let's get back to the game. Because we clearly disagree. We
cannot say they are a playoff team because.
But I'm not saying are they a playoff team. I'm not saying are they a playoff team. And let me be clear. Let me just make this very clear for you guys and for the listeners. I am not saying today that Inter Miami is a playoff team, that they're bound for the playoffs. They're going to make it 100%. I would bet my house on Inter Miami making it to the playoffs in 2022. I'm saying they're starting to look like a playoff team, like a team that could make it to the playoffs, where earlier in the year, I would have said no chance, no way. Jose and I had said it throughout the course of the season, no way that this team makes the playoffs, based on what we were seeing. Now, based on what we're seeing, I think there's a chance they make the playoffs. I think there's a realistic chance that they could make the playoffs. Does that mean they will make it?
Could.
Exactly. Yes. That has, so for me, the conversation has changed, because earlier in the year, NO Heck no, no way it looked like they were making the playoffs. Now, with the way they're playing, and I said this last week, I think that they look like a team that could make the playoffs. We will see if they do. It's up to them and how they handle these next 8 games. But the fact that they could is a change in their season from where they were early in the year. Now, let's go back to the game, because we've talked about the playoff standings a good bit. For me, and this is another sign of this is a sign of a good team in general, and this is a positive sign for Inter Miami. The fact that they were able to win despite not playing well is a massive positive. A massive positive, because that means you can find other ways to win. And that is what usually good teams, or a sign of a good team, a characteristic of a good team. Now, that does not mean, again, let me be clear, that I think Inter Miami is a good team today. But the fact that they're able to win games despite not playing well, that's a positive. That's a very big positive, because in the past, Inter Miami had to maybe grind it out like they did in this one, but they would need some very opportunistic finishing. Inter Miami had to play much better than it did in this one to get points from games earlier in the year. In this one, they did not play well. They got a set piece goal, a rare set piece goal, which we'll talk about in a bit, as well as a very fortunate goal, as Jose. Yes, a gift. Very fortunate, lucky goal. A howler from Alex Bono, Toronto FC's goalkeeper. A nightmare, a huge, massive mistake. So Inter Miami had some fortune in there, but they found a way to win. They found a way to win at home. And they've been very good at Drive Pink Stadium this year. So that, to me, is a positive sign for them. And, again, to me,
that is the difference. That is a difference, and that is why they are getting better. Because they used to lose this type of games. They didn't have the possibility. After they began winning with that gift of Bono, and then Insigne tied the game, usually Inter Miami would have been done by then. We would have been expecting, like, okay, they tied, this game is going to end in a tie. But they went and they looked for a winning goal, and they got it in the end. They didn't play nice. The game was not nice. Toronto handled them, even though Michael Bradley is, I don't know how many years old. They handled the midfield, Toronto did, but Inter Miami got the points. So that is an important win, not only for the points and for the standings and all of that we've been discussing, but also mentally for them. Because Toronto hadn't, since the Italians came on and the new signings came on, they hadn't been defeated. So this is good for Inter Miami, for the players mentally also. Obviously, there are still some things that they need to get better. Like, you cannot give the midfield away like they did, and I know Phil knows that because he said it in the post-match interview. But still, this is a positive result, and positive mentally for them, for players like Ariel to get goals and all of that. It's positive, looking forward to the next few games and to the end of the season.
Winning is becoming a habit for this team. It's becoming a habit because they have 10 wins on the year now, the same amount as they have lost. They've won more in their recent stretch of matches. And in the post-game interviews in the locker room, for the few of us that went into the locker room, there was definitely a good vibe, a positive vibe, but it wasn't as euphoric as I thought it would be. Andrea, you were in there as well. You tell me if you thought it was euphoric. It didn't feel as euphoric as some of the recent games. Like the New York City FC game, I felt like there was much more joy about that one in terms of the locker room vibe than this one. And that's, I think...
No, they were happy, but I think that in this moment, they know what it will take to get the team realistically to the playoffs. So they know that this was just a step. The New York City FC match that they got the points. Well, of course, they are the champions and all of that. It was interesting, but that was an added spice to tell you. But this, they know that now it's starting to get real. It's starting to look like they could get better and keep going and keep pushing for the playoffs. So I know the players. There's some experienced players here that have played in other leagues in the world. So they know that if they begin celebrating in this moment just because they won against New York City FC and Toronto and tied against Montreal in their last 3 games, just because of that, you're going to the playoffs. So I think that is good because they have experienced players, but they also have young players that can be easily impressed. So I liked when I saw them, like, keeping their balance, yes, being happy, yes, celebrating the win, but not as euphoric as they were against New York City FC.
So you agree with me. Okay, but I will reiterate, I think that winning more consistently now has as much to do with it. Yes, they know that the job's not done, clearly. There's still 8 games to go, the table's tight, but they've been winning more consistently now. Now, in the past, they were losing, they were tying, they would get a win here and there, so it was, more sporadic, more inconsistent in terms of how they won. So when they won, they really, really cherished it and savored it. Now they're winning a little bit more often, so it's becoming a habit. It's becoming something that they're getting used to, and that's definitely a positive for the locker room. It's very positive for the mindset and the mood of the team as they head into this stretch run. Now let's dive into the game a little bit more, because a key to this game, besides the fortunate goal and the well-worked set piece, was the defense. Defense stood tall. Yes, they gave up a goal shortly after Jean Mota struck off of a heck of a volley from Lorenzo Insigne from outside the penalty area. But by and large, the defense didn't give up a whole lot against one of the hottest attacks in MLS. And, there were moments where Insigne and Bernardeschi, they showed their quality. You could see in moments the reasons why ellos son los diferentes, why they're the different players out on the field, because they have so much quality on the ball. There was one sequence in the first half where Insigne, he cut one way, then he turned the other way, then he started playing some quick one-touch passing with teammates to try to set up a shot at the top of the 18. It was class all around on that play. Bernardeschi in the second half, he had one sequence where he turned one way on, I think, Christopher McVeigh, and then he turned the other way in a fluid motion, and he got away from him. It was the type of quality that you don't see from every player. But anyway, the defense does its job. Damian Lowe and Ryan Saylor, the center back tandem, they do a heck of a job, in my opinion. Damian Lowe was voted to the MLS Team of the Week as a result. He also got the assist on the game-winning goal. So, Jose, what did you think about the defensive performance in this one?
Well, I'm going to be honest here. I don't think Toronto was that big of a challenge for them. I know they are apparently in good form if you look at the stats. But let's be clear. I mean, both of Bernardeschi and Insigne, they came here and they haven't been able to work a lot. So I don't think most of the problems that Inter Miami had were not because of a collective effort, but because of the individual ability of the top players on Toronto. So I don't think they were that big of a challenge. I think the game was just not great, and so I wouldn't put too much value into it. Honestly, in the first half, it was more about set pieces. If you go back and watch the game and see the opportunities that Toronto had, almost all of them were corner kicks, and other than that, you see Bernardeschi on the right side and doing everything by himself. So it doesn't impress me when the defense only concentrates on stopping one player. I like the collective effort when a team is in front of you and they can do things as a whole, as a team. Then I think the defensive effort, I'll be impressed with that. So I think that we're just okay, just the usual. We have seen Inter Miami struggle recently, but we know in the end, Damian Lowe is a good defender and they can be good. And I thought, they were up to par with the challenge, but not overly impressed with Inter Miami defensively.
Wow. So one of the hottest teams one of the hottest attacks, excuse me.
But they can have good and bad games, Franco. It doesn't really,
absolutely.
I don't go by stats.
Absolutely. And listen, let's full disclosure here. This was Toronto FC's, if I'm not mistaken, their third game in 7 days, maybe 8 days, but third game in a short amount of time for the Italian imports. They were probably running on very tired legs at some point in this game, as probably Toronto FC was in general. But that's not Inter Miami's problem. Inter Miami can only play the opponent that's in front of it. I'm surprised that you're not giving them more credit for the defensive performance they put forth, because, again, the lone goal comes from a volley that comes off of a rebounded shot. It was a shot taken from, I'm trying to think if it was Bernardeschi, but McVay blocks it, and the ball just floats up into the sky and falls down. Insigne, with the quality that he has, he tracks it down, and as he's falling, he volleys it perfectly into the bottom right corner past Drake Callender. So it was a type of goal that you won't see from very many players in the MLS. It's why Insigne is the DP that he is and getting paid what he's getting paid by Toronto FC. But besides that, the defense held firm. Besides that, the defense didn't give up a whole lot. And Phil Neville noted that after the game, saying that much of the game was played in front of Inter Miami as opposed to behind when passes.
But remember, they have Bernardeschi and Insigne, but they didn't have a dangerous 9.
Absolutely, I agree with that. But that's again. This is still been one of this has still been.
They were attacking, but they weren't dangerous to Inter Miami.
Even still, they've been, even with not having a number 9, they've been one of the top scoring teams during the recent run of games. And they've been scoring goals.
Yeah, but they had a bad night. They had a bad night.
I don't feel like you're giving the Inter Miami enough credit for limiting Toronto FC from doing well. Like I feel like there needs.
Not the case.
I disagree.
Because Toronto is not. Toronto is what Inter Miami used to be early on. They had some good players, but they needed time. They needed time to get together, to find a system, to know tendencies, to do so many things that you cannot do during the regular season. And that's why Inter Miami will be even better next year, because they will have a core of players. Next year, they will have more time, one more preseason to go around. Well, Toronto, they have been trying to go through that, through finding what the identity of this team is during the season. And they are top players coming into this league. And so that's why they are making a difference. But individually, and I'm sorry, if they scored 25 goals in the last 3 matches and they play regularly against Inter Miami, I'm not going to take into account the 25 goals they score against other teams. I'm just going to take into account what they did against Inter Miami to evaluate what Inter Miami did defensively. They can have a bad night. And they had it against Inter Miami. And credit to Inter Miami, because even with a bad night from Toronto, they were able to capitalize on that as well and get 3 points.
Exactly.
It's as easy as that.
Well, at least you gave them credit this time. At least you gave them credit this time, because I didn't hear a whole lot of credit before. And I think Inter Miami deserves some credit for their ability to shut down Insigne and Bernardeschi. Did they have a bad night? Sure. How much is that on them? How much is that on Inter Miami? That's all up for debate. But Inter Miami played a part.
You cannot say they shut it down because Insigne scored.
And he scored off a half volley. But what else did he do from the run of play? What else did he do from the run of play? And yes, a goal counts.
That came because of a mistake, of a bad clearance. So you cannot say that it didn't come. Listen.
Again, another example of the overreaction.
Yes, that is what we are telling you. We cannot be saying, "Oh, Damian Lowe is gonna win Defender of the Year." In MLS.
But who's saying that? Who's saying, like, you guys are going to an extreme.
Inter Miami deserves praise
for the way they defended. Absolutely, in the game
for the win. They deserve
and
credit.
what was the key ingredient for them to win this game? It wasn't the attack, because the attack we just said didn't play well. We've just agreed to that. It was the defense held up and protected the lead.
How many shots did you see Toronto take? You were beside me. How many shots did you see Toronto?
Toronto finished with 16 shots, 4 on target. 59% possession.
4 shots on target.
59% possession.
And you're telling me that the defense was a key for the win when they had 4 shots?
Yes, if you force a team who has taken 16 shots to only put 4 of those on frame, then I think your defense is doing a good job. You don't need to put if 16 shots,
your winger,
if 16,
that is because you play just through the wing.
And what, wingers can't take shot on target? Striker. So wingers can't take shots on target, Andrea? And that's like 16 shots from 4 on target mean that 12 of those shots were not on target, right? Easy math. So that to me is a sign of a defense that's not giving up a whole lot. But I don't think you need to give up. I don't think you need to give up shots. But I don't think you need to give up shots on target. I don't think you need to give up shots on target to be considered. Oh, okay, we gave up 10 shots on target and we didn't give up any goals. So that means no. I think that would say the opposite of what you're trying to say. The fact that they didn't give up a lot of shots on target shows to me, just off numbers, a solid defense. And again, take the numbers away. Inter Miami in the second half was under pressure for quite a bit. Ratoneando, as we would say, looking to hit on the counter, just with numbers deep, almost parking the bunts, you could say. Ratoneando, aka, playing like a mouse, just sitting back deep and then coming out of the hole every now and then to try to find the cheese or find a goal. So,
were you impressed with Toronto?
The game was not to me. The game wasn't a good game overall. Neither side was overly impressive. But Inter Miami deserves credit for its organization, for its compactness, for its discipline, for its effort. I think it deserves that credit for those attributes that showed in this game.
For me, they deserve that credit for the win.
1-1? What if the game ended 1-1? Would you have been saying the same thing?
I would have still said the defense was the better side. Absolutely.
Doubt it.
You know who had a good game for Toronto FC, and you know who I thought did not have a great game for Inter Miami? I thought Jaden Nelson, the 19-year-old center midfielder, Canadian, for Toronto FC, he had a heck of a game until he was subbed out against Gregory. He gave Gregory fits. Gregory couldn't stop him, I would say, to save his life almost, because Jaden Nelson was doing flicks, tricks, power buying him. Gregory was trying to pull him by the arm, by the shoulder on different sequences, and Jaden Nelson either flew by him or used some craftiness on the dribble. If you have time and you have it TiVoed or you have it on ESPN Plus, go back and watch that matchup, because I was very, very impressed with Jaden Nelson in his matchup against Gregory. Gregory did not look like the steely defensive midfielder that we've all come to expect. Jaden Nelson made him look silly at times. Silly. And I give credit to Jaden Nelson for a heck of a game. But overall, Toronto FC did not play well. Inter Miami did not play well. But I think Inter Miami's organization, its defense, its ability to close up shop, ratonear, and see this one out, I think that deserves credit. But let's move on, because there's other things to talk about, including that game winner from Ariel Lassiter, your boy, Jose, scoring off of a rare set piece. And this was right before halftime, as I mentioned before. It was a free kick from Jean Mota, and instead of whipping it was on the right flank, and instead of whipping it into the box to the targets, he plays it low and short to Pozuelo. Pozuelo clips it into Damian Lowe at the back post. Damian Lowe gets it across goal to Lassiter, and Lassiter just has to push it in. A bit of an awkward finish, but it goes in nonetheless. That gives Ariel Lassiter 2 goals in the last 2 games, and that was enough, like I said before, to give Inter Miami the 3 points. So, set pieces is something I've asked not only Phil Neville about, but Diego Alonso. It's an area of play where Inter Miami has largely struggled historically. Attacking set pieces, anyway. But my whole point in all the 3 seasons, or near 3 seasons that I've brought this up, or that I've mentioned this, or I've analyzed this, is that they needed to be better for situations and games like this. Because this is the type of game where, yes, maybe you don't play well with the ball. Maybe you're not that sharp in the attack on the day. But guess what? A set piece can win you a game. And it did for Inter Miami in this one. So that's been one of the reasons why I've been critical about that aspect of play, especially under Phil Neville. Not only because he's been here longer than Diego Alonso's team, but because on Phil Neville's coaching staff, there is someone with the title set piece specialist. And listen, if you're going to have that title, then you have to produce results, in my opinion, because that's what you're being paid to do. If you hold that title, you need to produce results in that facet. Yes, on the defensive side, of course, try not to give up goals, but in the attacking side as well. Imagine you just have the title like, I don't know, Jose is co-host extraordinaire, but Jose never says more than 2 sentences on this show. Like, does he deserve co-host extraordinaire? Is he living up to that billing? No. So, anyway, my point is that they needed to be better on set pieces. They were able to find a way to get one into the back of the net in this game. I asked Phil Neville about it after the match, and he talked about how, throw-ins aren't considered by, I don't know if he meant me or just media in general, but how throw-ins aren't considered set pieces, but Inter Miami counts them as set pieces, and they've scored a few off of set pieces. I disagreed with that notion, but anyway, they got one in this game. It proved. You agree with me or you agree with Phil?
With Phil.
You agree that throw-ins are set pieces?
Yeah, they can be used as set pieces.
They can be.
Yeah. Without a doubt. Yes,
I don't
1,000.
know if Inter Miami uses them as set pieces though, but
I will say that. Yeah, I know for a fact that Inter Miami does train different types of throw-ins and different types of creative ways to try to play the ball from los laterales. And
yeah, but
there
like
was
I
one play.
would count it
Andrea,
as a set piece.
Andrea, there was one play earlier this year which I really, really liked. I forget which game it was. I think it was Christopher McVey taking a throw-in off of Robert Taylor, and it reminded me of street soccer, of Futbol en la calle, because Robert Taylor turns around, he faces away from Christopher McVey, and like the defense, the defense is like caught off guard there a little bit, and McVey throws the ball off of Robert Taylor's back to himself. So the ball's legally in play because it touched Robert Taylor, touched the teammate, and then Christopher McVey took it on the dribble. So they definitely work on set pieces, and I know that they do. On throw-ins. I don't consider them set pieces. As someone said to me in the aftermath of that comment from Phil Neville postgame, is like, well, yeah, Inter Miami, of course, is going to count throw-ins as set pieces, because if they count just attacking set pieces, well, there's not a whole lot of goals to look at from there. So they have to count something. They got to count throw-ins then, because clearly on attacking set pieces, they haven't been good enough. But anyway, I disagree with that, but I'll listen to you.
Say is, you can call it a set piece when you get the ball into the area, not when you're doing a set piece, throw-in on your own part of the field.
I think this is, I could be wrong. I think Phil Neville meant it as like they come up with different plays or creative ways to take throw-ins to try to attack, and that he counts those moments as being set piece like. Which again, I don't agree with that. I agree that you could get creative.
I don't agree completely. If he meant it like that, I don't agree completely.
Well, obviously, if it's near your own goal, it's not going to be a set piece.
Yeah, but if they count they count it like that,
it's impossible. You cannot train that.
But
Jose,
you agree with the premise that they needed to be better at it for games like this, where you don't play well, but a set piece can win you the game.
Yeah, you need to find a way to win games through set pieces. Although, that's a must for every team, and even it carries even more importance for teams that are not consistent, because if you're good at set pieces, then you're going to have some good results in games that you don't deserve them, right? So, the one thing I would say here, and maybe to defend the set pieces specialist, is that, we obviously put a lot more value into the plays when they finish with goals. But I think the play over the weekend is a perfect example, because the setup is just beautiful. It's a beautiful play, very well designed, very well executed, until the end, because it is not a clean finish. It is not a clean finish from Ari Lassiter. And so if he misses that, then we might be overlooking that play. And it's a great setup. So, we have to go back and we have to analyze the game and see what the set pieces specialist is really doing, because he cannot put the ball in the back of the net. It's the responsibility on the players on the field to finish the play.
Yeah, but you add that, then you add Pozuelo, and everything changes, because we have seen a lot of good set pieces throughout the year, but none as the ball Pozuelo put on Damian Lowe's head.
Well, my thought is, if the play is well designed, that's the job of the set pieces specialist. It's on the players to execute on the field. And they did it this weekend, and, it really worked out for Inter Miami. But I wouldn't be overly critical of set pieces and the set pieces specialist, because when I see the plays happen and they don't capitalize into goals, then I think we should give some value to that as well, because the work is there. And obviously for us that we only get to see 15 minutes of practice, then it's harder to judge. I remember a few years back when Alessandro Nesta was coaching Miami FC, he would allow us to watch the entire practice, and when he worked on set pieces, we were able to see them, and then when we saw them during the game, we knew exactly what they wanted to do, and when they worked out and they finished on goals, we were like, oh yeah, I see, I remember that play. They trained that play, and so we don't have that luxury here in Inter Miami. So that's why I don't want to be overly critical about set pieces.
I want to say something positive about the set pieces is that when they are defending, we saw Toronto have a lot of free kicks during this game, and they defended those well. I think they do a good job in defending set pieces. Of course, they have a lot of tall players, but I guess that is part of the work of the specialists too, because I really like how they defended the free kicks that Toronto had. A lot, like 2 of them were deflected by the barrera, and I think that is part of the work.
By the wall.
Yeah, by the wall. Thank you for the assist. And I think that is part of the work of the set piece specialists that they have.
Absolutely. But they also needed to produce in the attack, especially with the
they were lacking.
Especially with the tall players that they added this year: Ryan Saylor, Damian Lowe, Christopher McVeigh.
Definitely,
they needed to do better there.
Defenders should have more goals than what they have scored during the season. I agree 1,000%.
I would say that to that point.
Andrea, wait, Jose, I'm sorry. Jose, sorry. Andrea did finally give some credit to the defense, though. I just heard her praise the defense. Shh, don't tell her I said that. Okay, Jose, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I would say that, the center backs haven't proven to be, yes, they are tall, but they are not very good offensively.
Right.
Like, what have you seen from Mavica and Saylor when they play? And listen, Mavica is really, really tall, but he doesn't take advantage of his height when it comes to scoring goals. I mean, I would have to go back into stats, but he might not even have a shot on goal from a set piece, from a corner kick.
So I spoke to a coach last year about Mabika and his frame, obviously, and set pieces, and the coach said that it's something that Mabika was still working on at that point, and I imagine that's still the case now, given that we're only a year removed from that conversation, or about a year removed, because what the coach told me was essentially that Mabika's still figuring out how to use his frame and how to use his body. Let's not forget, just for comparison's sake, although it's a bit different, earlier this year, Phil Neville said that they were trying to get Campana to be a little bit more physical, to use his build and his frame to hold off defenders more. And in the beginning of the year, we did not see Campana do a good job at that. As the year went on, as the season went on, I think we saw Campana get a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more rough, a little bit more físico, or a little bit more jugar al choque, which just means to look for contact and not be afraid of the contact, than we did prior. So I think they're still working on that. But yes, I agree with your overall point that the center backs in general haven't been overly threatening in the attack on set pieces this year.
Yeah.
Maybe this is the sign of better things to come. Maybe this is the page being turned, and they're going to start contributing a bit more during these final games. We'll see. Quickly, Andrea, anything you want to add about Lassiter and Mota before we switch to the Red Bulls game on Saturday? Anything you want to add? Because they're both the goal scorers in this one. And obviously, I don't think, Mota had an okay game. He was voted man of the match. I don't think he was the man of the match. Phil Neville didn't think he was the man of the match, because Phil Neville after the game said he thought Damian Lowe should have been man of the match, or was the man of the match. Anything you want to add quickly about either of those two players? Akisita, go for it.
I wanted to say that I spoke to Ariel after in the locker room, and Ariel was very happy with his goal, and I asked him about why does Phil take him off, and he says that he is 100% physically, but he thinks that he is coming from an injury, so the team wants him to be fresh for the playoff push, of course. And it also me llamó la atención. I don't know. It really intrigued me that he said that the team had, even I didn't ask him, and he said that the team had changed with the arrival of Pozuelo, because Pozuelo has a big football IQ, but Pozuelo didn't have his best game with Inter Miami. We can talk a little bit about the lineup and all of that, but even though he didn't have his biggest game, he helped the team, and he helped Ariel, and Ariel said that is because Pozuelo knows the position of every player. He knew that he was going to be there, and he knew that Damian Lowe was going to be there. So I think that is interesting to know, and to keep learning how Pozuelo has helped this team and his teammates to be better. And I agree completely that I didn't think Jan Mota was the man of the match of this match.
Closing thoughts for me are two things on this game. One is that I think part of the reason why Inter Miami did not play well was because Pozuelo no apareció. He didn't appear a whole lot over the run of play. When he did, when he got on the ball and in dangerous spots, was when Inter Miami was at its most dangerous. I think he was involved in two sequences where he played good balls in behind or good passes in the final third, and they led to shots, dangerous shots for Inter Miami. But by and large, he was invisible in this one against his former team. Although again, he technically gets a secondary assist on that game-winning goal. Technically, by MLS's stat keeping, technically he does, even though, again, we all despise secondary assists here. The second closing thought I have on this game was that Emerson Rodriguez did not have a good game off the bench. He had moments in space, in transition, on the counter, in which he could have, I felt, done a little bit more, a bit better, and maybe put this game away when Toronto FC was pushing numbers forward and there was a lot of space in behind, but just did not have that sharpness on the day. There was one play, and Andrea and I disagreed on it strongly in the press box late on in the dying minutes when Victor Ulloa plays a very poor pass from the right side over to the left, Emerson Rodriguez, and rather than chase it down, which Emerson Rodriguez could have because the pass didn't have a whole lot of pace, he just laments the fact that that wasn't played correctly, and he just lets it roll out of bounds as opposed to chasing. Andrea, I hear you, but I want to go to Jose because you've given your final thoughts on the game. Save it for your final thoughts of the pod. Jose, your closing thoughts on this match.
No, again, I just want to reiterate, the importance of getting 3 points, playing at home against a team that's chasing you. I think, it's a good step forward, but just that, it's one step.
Okay, so look, I think they're coming around. Slowly but surely, I'm getting them to come around. All right, now let's switch gears very quickly to this weekend's game on Saturday against the New York Red Bulls and Lewis Morgan, former Inter Miami player. The New York Red Bulls I think this is a very good game. We talked about the Toronto game. We talked about how that was a big 6-pointer. This game on Saturday might be just as big because New York Red Bulls are in 4th place and they have 41 points. Can I finish? Can I finish? Can I finish?
You're thinking about chasing the 4th place team when you're 2 points away. Come on now.
Can I finish? Can I finish?
I guess. But here you go again. Chain of overreaction.
Okay. I mean, I'm giving out just pure facts. I mean, if that's an overreaction, okay. Whatever you say, Jose. Inter Miami's in 6th place, 36 points. New York Red Bulls are in 4th place, having played one more game with 41. If Inter Miami can find a way to beat the New York Red Bulls on the road this weekend, Inter Miami closes that gap with a game in hand. It's a very big game for Inter Miami. A very big game for Inter Miami. Because losing, as you guys noted, depending on the results, could drop them out of the playoff picture altogether. So, I will go back to you, Jose. What do you think? What do you think about this match on Saturday at Red Bull Arena in Harrison, New Jersey?
You're overreacting just because Inter Miami won the last game. I mean, if you win this game, obviously it's a great result, but that doesn't mean you're going to move past New York Red Bulls in the near future. It takes more than winning this game for Inter Miami to move past the 4th place team in the conference. And if they end up losing this game, it's not the end of the world. They are not out of the playoffs. They will still be in the race. They will be where they deserve to be. Inter Miami deserves to be in the playoff push, in the playoff race right now. They don't deserve to be in 3rd place, 4th place, looking for home field advantage in the playoffs. That's just the reality of the 2022 season for Inter Miami. If you want to accept it, then fine. If you're not, well, I guess at the end of the year we'll know who was right about it. But I would say there's no way this is a bigger game than the Toronto FC game over the weekend. I think that's a huge game because you're competing against a direct rival. I don't think in New York Red Bulls at this point is at the same level with Inter Miami. They are not the greatest team that ever played in MLS. I mean, it's not impossible for Inter Miami to win against New York Red Bulls, but I think they won the game that they needed to win, especially at home this past weekend. And if they can get a draw in Red Bull Arena, I think there'll be a good result for them.
Andrea, your thoughts on Saturday's game?
I agree with Jose. I agree. I guess my opinion is that the next game is more important than the game with the Red Bulls, because if you get a point in New York, it's gonna be a good result. It's gonna be a good result for your playoff push. Of course, it's gonna be difficult. I don't understand, when I was analyzing the table like that at the beginning, you told me that I was crazy, that I was talking, and now you're saying that Inter Miami could be going to fourth place if they win.
Well, if they win, they're a point away from fourth place, yes.
Yes, that is what I meant when I talked about the table at the beginning. Results change, and you cannot say that just because you win one game, you're going to the playoffs. But it's going to be hard against New York Red Bulls, especially because of Luis Morgan, who scored the last game. They won against Atlanta 2-1.
It's not a big deal. Everybody wins against him.
Yeah, but Luis Morgan keeps scoring, and I guess he will want to score against his team again, his old team again. So it's gonna be an interesting matchup. It's gonna be interesting to see how Inter Miami goes on the road again after having good results at home. We saw the last road trip that they had against San Jose and Montreal, and all the drama and the inhumane comments that Phil had. So let's see how they react to a normal trip from Miami to New York, and if they can get a result. A draw would be good against the fourth team in the table, and a win would be spectacular.
Luis Morgan on the year has 11 goals and 4 assists. Not sure how many of those are secondary assists, but he has 11 goals and 4 assists by MLS. That's in 25 games, 24 starts for the New York Red Bulls. A heck of a season for the Scotsman, who occupies a bunch of different positions for the Red Bulls, or has this year. He doesn't always just play out wide. He sometimes plays centrally, and he's shown off his finishing touch. He's definitely relished this move to Harrison, New Jersey, or New York, if you want to just go by the team's official name. Again, I think, listen, if Inter Miami can find a way, doesn't matter if they play ugly, if they can find a way to win this game and get within a point, then I think next week you guys are singing a different tune. I think you guys will change your tune a lot more about the direction Inter Miami's headed in. Because if they can go in there and beat...
The real important game is against Columbus, who has a game less than Inter Miami.
Again, if they can go into the Red Bull Arena and win this game and get within a point, fourth place, that sets them up nicely. That sets them up very nicely for what's left in the year.
What happened?
Franco,
we do have to take
2 points.
You're right. Sorry, 2 points. 2 points. Sorry,
Yeah,
you're
points.
right. Sorry. Poor math. I did too much math early on. Now I can't do any. Okay, but look, Inter Miami beat the New York Red Bulls earlier in the year at DraftKings Stadium, 2-0. That was back in late May 22nd. Goals from Ariel Lassiter and Robert Taylor in that one. I remember that game clearly because I remember seeing the Red Bulls struggle to press. They're a high-pressing team, very energetic. They like to cause havoc and chaos and force you into 50-50s and second balls. They don't like the game to be pretty. They like the game to be ugly, and that's what they prize themselves on. A lot of running, a lot of hard work. They weren't able to pull that off effectively in South Florida in the heat and the humidity. But at home this weekend, I imagine they'll have a bit more success with the press. Now, curious to see how Phil Neville and Inter Miami approach this one in terms of the game plan. Do they look to play through the press? Do they look to play over the press with long balls and diagonal switches? Do they look for Pozuelo and hope that he can create with Higuain? It'll be very interesting to see their game plan and how they go about this one. Very quickly, so we can wrap up this first segment. Jose, how do you think Inter Miami should approach this game?
I think they need to find that balance, and they need to recognize early on what the match is going to look like for them in terms of is New York Red Bulls being aggressive? Are they dominating the tempo of the game? Are they winning the second ball? Are they winning the 1v1 battles? Then, you take a defensive mindset, because if they do all that, that means they will be pretty much in control, and they will be having a good night. If that is not the case, then you need to recognize that maybe there's a possibility that maybe you can get 3 points out of this. Maybe if you know when to attack, if you won't know how to react to the mistakes that might come out of the back, out of a team that, yes, they are in fourth place, but yeah, they can actually start thinking about New York City. They are 4 points away. They're 5 points away from Montreal. So, it's important for them to get 3 points. So if you're able to find that balance and recognize the moment, then I think, that's the mindset that the team should bring. Just because you're in a middle ground here, whether you are thinking that you are close enough to New York Red Bulls, or whether you're thinking as well of not getting out of the playoff picture. So they are in between in that decision, and I think New York Red Bulls would dictate what Inter Miami needs to do early on in the match.
So the key to the game is, in one sentence?
To find that balance. Find the balance.
Okay. All right. Andrea, anything you want to quickly add before we close out this first segment?
Hopefully, what I wanted to add, hopefully we don't see a change in formation again. And hopefully the team can play and can compete like we saw them and competing at home these last 2 matches.
I think we might see an Inter Miami team that avoids playing out of the back. I think Phil Neville might, again, he's tried to play or have the team play a bit more as of late. But I think in this one, given that the Red Bulls are at home, given that, their penchant for forcing turnovers high up the field, I think Inter Miami will look to play long. And I think that's the key. Just avoiding those mistakes, avoiding playing into the Red Bulls' hands. Yes, you want to try to play good soccer, good football, but if in trying to do so you give up a goal early on, or you give up a goal that puts you behind, I think it's going to be tough to come back against the Red Bulls in their place. Now, Inter Miami has shown that penchant, that habit of not saying die until the very end and being able to pull out results. But I think, for me, they just have to avoid playing into the Red Bulls' hands. Don't do what the Red Bulls want you to do, which is knock the ball around and in your defensive half and risk potentially turning it over in dangerous opportunities that they can then quickly transition into attacking moments for themselves. I think playing long will be the game plan, and I think it should be the game plan in this one to give Inter Miami their best chance of winning this game, or at least getting a draw out of it. But anyway, all right, that does it for this first segment. We will take a quick break. We'll come back and talk about a couple of players, Harvey Neville and Mattias Pellegrini, and of course do our Q&A session. We will do that after this. Okay, guys, before we get to the Q&A session, you have to talk very quickly about 2 players, like I mentioned before. Let's start with Harvey Neville, who is officially an Inter Miami first-team player. He received his green card, as did father Phil Neville, and he is now signed to the first team as a result. Obviously, this has prompted talks of nepotism from people on social media, some members of the media. What do you think, Jose? You said you were going to tell us the truth. Let's hear it.
Yes. The truth is that Harvey is a good, or will be a good MLS player. He's a good MLS caliber player. So it is completely unfair. And I know that's the easiest thing to do. Check who's the head coach for Inter Miami. Check the last name. Check Harvey's last name and come to a conclusion. That is not why he's getting a spot in the first team. That might be part of how he got to Inter Miami initially. Yes, that might be part of it. But
that might be part of it? Might be part of it?
Yes.
No, that is part of it. That is how he ended up in South Florida, because his dad is the coach of the team, and that has been publicly acknowledged. But then you can't say you can't say that might be part of it, because it is part of it. It's not might, it is.
I was not there doing the signings and all that, so that might be part of it. But we have moved past that conversation. The kid has performed. We saw it in preseason. We have seen it with MLS Next Pro, although I'm not going to come here and tell you how many assists and all this and that and the GPX and how many miles he run, all that. He's a solid player. I don't need all that to know that he's a solid MLS caliber player. So, I mean, people can say whatever they want. I'm just letting you know right now, right here, that the kid earned a spot in the Inter Miami roster for the 2022 season. That doesn't mean that he should be with Valencia, or he should be with Manchester United, or he should be with Montreal in MLS. That means he's good enough for Inter Miami right now. I don't know if that's going to be the case next year. Maybe they bring more players and, he's not good enough if you have better players in the roster. But as of right now, I think he earned a spot in the first team. So I just want to clarify that, because I have the luxury of being able to watch him play in person, watch him play for MLS Next Pro. And I know not a lot of people have that, right? Because we know how many people cover the team. But I just want to put that out there, just in case somebody's listening and writing a story or writing a tweet or writing a Facebook post or whatever, or an Instagram reel or whatever, just making an assessment without even looking at him a minute or two on a football field. So I would say this is a public service announcement. There you go.
There you go. And Harvey Neville has signed a deal through the 2024 season with team options for 2025 and 2026. There's definitely, I understand the perception from some people, and there's definitely an element of nepotism here. I would say he's been okay with the second team. He's been solid to okay. I want to say he's been wow or spectacular or amazing or incredible. Been okay to solid. There's definitely a need for another right back in the first team roster, or there was. So him filling it, okay. Although they've waited for him for much of the season to fill it, because they always knew that they were going to sign him. There's definitely for me an element of nepotism here. And look, the press release Inter Miami puts out, it talks about the deal, and they have a quote from Chris Henderson talking about how he's developed with Inter Miami CF2. Yada, yada, yada. Nowhere in the press release does it mention that he's Phil Neville's son. Nowhere. Which is obvious.
It doesn't have to.
But it's obvious, Andrea. It's obvious and clear that everybody knows that he's his son. So why ignore that fact? Why try to avoid... But why try to avoid that? Why try to avoid that in the press release?
Because you don't see Toronto say, oh, Bob Bradley is Michael Bradley's father, or, oh, Michael Bradley's father is the Toronto's coach. You don't see that. I don't agree that Inter Miami had to say that Harvey Neville is Phil Neville's son. They have a professional relationship in the club, and that is what the club needs to mention. Their blood relationship is not important for what happens in the training grounds and at Inter Miami and at the stadium. So I don't think that they should have said that is his son. I think I also agree with Jose that
I think it's disingenuous not to acknowledge it. I think it's disingenuous not to acknowledge it, because it's clear that he's his son. We know, everybody knows that that's his son. And listen, again.
Yeah, but it doesn't matter, Franco. It has happened a lot in football in South America, in Europe, in Honduras, everywhere. It happens a lot because the sons of players and daughters of players want to become also players. So we have seen this a lot, and it's not a big deal. Some people can call it nepotism, but I had told you in the past when you asked me if I would prefer Harvey Neville or Noah Allen, I told you I would prefer Harvey Neville because footballistically, he deserves it. The opportunity to be a first-team player and to prove himself, not just because he's Phil's son or whatever. I think Harvey is a complete player. He had a complete upbringing when he had his time at Valencia, and he learned a lot of things that will make him a good player for MLS. So I don't think that it's nepotism or it's because of his father, but I can see how people can think that. But I see it as normal, as I have seen him. I have seen this position 1,000 times, and I just mentioned another one in MLS with Michael Bradley.
And guess what? When Michael Bradley played for Bob Bradley at the U.S. men's national team, there were absolutely, initially on, talks about nepotism and why Michael Bradley was starting in that midfield over other players like Benny Feilhaber, Maurice Adu, Jermaine Jones later on, etc., etc. There was definitely that conversation.
But they were wrong. Exactly. Michael Bradley is the best midfielder that they had in the last 10 years.
And guess what? Early on, he wasn't the best. He wasn't the best. And yet he stayed in that midfield over and over and over again, despite not being the best, despite being inconsistent. He developed into a very, very, very good player. But that could be, for argument's sake, because...
than Michael Bradley.
Okay, that could have been, he could have developed in part because he got so many appearances, sometimes arguably undeservedly, with the U.S. men's national team. But anyway, that's not the point. I'll give you a quick down memory lane very quickly. Harvey Neville, when he first started training with Inter Miami in 2021, it was because he was just in town to see his dad, and he was just doing it to stay fit as he assessed his options for the next stop in his burgeoning, blossoming career. He even played in a scrimmage, a preseason scrimmage, when the first team played the reserves of the first team. So first team starters versus first team reserves. He was the only player from either the second team or any guest player that started in that match. And he did so in central midfield. And then Phil Neville said, oh no, like he's not here to be signed. He's just here to be with his old man in South Florida and spend some time together. That didn't pass the sniff test for me then. Clearly, that's not what happened. He ended up being signed to the second team. A year later, he gets signed to the first team. So there's definitely elements of nepotism here. And look, again, I think he's been okay to solid with Inter Miami too. So I'm not saying this is completely undeserved for him or anything of the like, but there's definitely a layer or an element of nepotism here. For me, 100%. But we can agree to disagree. So let's move on. We'll see how he fares when he does play. His performances on the field will do the talking in the long run.
Franco, can I say something funny? That you mentioned Phil getting his green card also when we were in a press conference, and he said that he was going to make his trip to get his green card back to England. He thought that he was becoming an American citizen with his green card, and the press officer for Inter Miami had to explain that it was just his green card. Right. Because he said, I'm going to be an American the next time I see you.
He said he was going to run for president too, and obviously that's that's not the case. It's not the case. Obviously he was joking, but that's not the case. Anyway, all right, quickly, second player to talk about, Matias Pellegrini. He has been put through waivers and is now with New York City FC. Andrea, just your thoughts on that.
Well, I guess it's a good move for Matias Pellegrini. He's going to a team that is the champions of this league still. They can be bicampeones this year if they continue to be good. It's going to be good for him because Tati left. They need some new talent. He's also Argentine, so he's going to come and make them better. I think Matias Pellegrini is a good player. I just wanted you guys, since you guys are the experts in American sports, to explain to other people that listen to us out of the country, what does it mean to get off waivers, please?
Andrea, I don't have the energy to explain what MLS's funky rules are. Look, Matias Pellegrini was bought out in 2021 because Inter Miami had too many DPs. They had to get rid of one. They bought him out in theory. Then but he was still on the books overall, which is very confusing. He was loaned out to Estudiantes with a purchase option. They did not trigger that. Estudiantes in Argentina, the club he started his career with. He came back this summer to Inter Miami to train as they sorted out his future because, again, he's not on the roster. He's not eligible to play on the roster, but still on their books. So they were still in charge of him to figure out a solution. The solution is that they waived him. Okay. But, why couldn't they do that to begin with? But they waived him, and New York City FC picked him up. So he stays in MLS. He'll be on a direct competitor in the Eastern Conference. We'll see how it goes for him. It's not a bad team to be a part of because we've seen in the last few years that they do tend to develop good attacking talent. So we'll see how it goes for Pellegrini. That book, that chapter is now closed. So no more confusing Pellegrini conversations, at least for a good while. Okay, Q&A session time. Let's start with Eric Yanez, who I thought early on, Andrea, that this was a relative of yours because his last name is spelled exactly the same as yours is. But as you've told me, he is not related to you, unless you're lying to me. But Eric,
unless he's my long lost brother, cousin, or who knows.
There's only one cousin on this show, Andrea, and that's El Primo. All right. Eric Yanez says, going to our first game Saturday, any matchups you're excited to see? I will ask Jose quickly to give me a matchup or any matchup that you might be excited to see on Saturday.
Oh, well, obviously, Lewis Morgan, right? Whoever his matchup against, I want to see that because I would imagine that Lewis Morgan has been waiting for this match. Obviously they played here early on in the season, but it's different when you obviously he's going to be a lot more comfortable in New York. I don't know what the weather is going to be like. It might be hot over there too.
Meteorologist Jose is back in the building.
But since every team struggles here. I would guess this is the comeback game for Lewis Morgan. So any matchup between Lewis Morgan and I guess Yedlin, that could be a good matchup.
Assuming he plays on the wing. Assuming he plays on the wing. Because he might play centrally.
I'm gonna add one matchup for Eduardo. Andres Reyes against Higuain.
Well, Andres Reyes probably isn't starting, and he's probably not playing.
He started the last game.
Yeah, but he probably won't start this game. And it's Eric, not Eduardo. Eric. By the way, speaking of Eric,
Eric, I'm sorry, Eric.
I need to give Eric a big shout out because Eric's been a long-time listener. He's asked questions occasionally, but he's a long-time listener despite not being from South Florida. He's based off his Twitter profile in Ridge, New York. And obviously that would explain why this will be his first game this weekend. Red Bull Arena is much closer to him than DraftKings Stadium. But that said, I believe he's an Inter Miami fan. From what I understand, he's an Inter Miami fan, just lives further away. So I believe he'll be rooting on Inter Miami. I could be mistaken. Maybe he's a Red Bulls fan. But if he's going to his first game, and he's been listening to Miami Total Football Radio from possibly the first season, then I believe he's an Inter Miami fan. So shout out to Eric Yanez for being a faithful listener and Inter Miami fan from far, far away. Next question comes from Jason Siegel. What is the status of Leo and Coco next week? So, Inter Miami had practice on Tuesday, but Phil Neville did not speak. He will speak on Wednesday after we record this show. So we don't have an exact status, but I can share this. Campana is ahead of schedule. He did some, from what media could see on Tuesday, some running around the field with a trainer, a physio, but no ball work as of yet. Coco is back in practice, so if you're asking me what I think their statuses will be, not what they actually are, no inside information there yet, or not enough information to provide you with actual concrete answers, I would say I think Coco will be in uniform. Campana, probably still too early for him. Okay, next question. Miguel Paz. This one goes for you, Jose. Do you think if the playoffs started tomorrow, Neville will put out the same starting lineup or the same starting 11 as the Toronto FC game?
That's a good question. I would say yes. Yes, I would say yes, but with some hesitation just because if they finished 7th, per se, I can see them going on the road and being a little bit more defensive-minded. But I would say yes. I think they can use the same starting lineup. I would only change Sailor, bring McVay as a center back, and then see how Kieran Gibbs is feeling. To put him as a left back. That would be it.
I think those are the only two real question marks in the starting lineup, right? I think much of the starting lineup is established and set there. I think the only two that you could potentially talk about there is, do you put McVay inside and Gibbs on the outside as opposed to having the inexperienced Sailor in there, or leave it as it is now? And the second one I would think is Lassiter as a winger starting, or Duke in the midfield starting. To make room for Duke, and you'd have to change the formation, you'd have to change the personnel there a bit. And I think Lassiter is the one. So I think those are the two spots, left wing and left center back, that are a bit of a question mark. I think everywhere else on the field, I think the starters are pretty much set in stone. So let's move on. Last question we'll talk about here is from Dos Knows. He says, did we receive any compensation from Pellegrini heading to New York City FC? We got lucky to get something in return for Carranza and Lewis Morgan. Do you see Chris getting rid of Robbie Robinson and Nick Marsman? So the answer to the first question about compensation is simply no. Inter Miami received no compensation for Pellegrini. He, again, was waived, so that does not entitle Inter Miami to anything in return from New York City FC picking him up. As for, do you see Chris getting rid of Robbie Robinson and Nick Marsman? You know what? Let's make this question our final thought. All three of our final thoughts. Unless you guys have something really, really, really important that you guys want to share, let's make this all of our final thoughts, because I would like to hear all of us answer this, because this is a conversation that we've had, I think, off mics, off air, and something we talked about, Andrea and I, with a few other media members this past weekend, once again in the press box, because I think I've mentioned this before, when there's rain delays or even before games, a few media members tend to come around a certain section of the media box where Andrea and I sit, and we tend to have good-hearted debates about the team and what we think about certain players and certain games, and et cetera, et cetera. We get into real football conversations. And Robbie Robinson is a regular topic that's brought up there, because there's a section of the media in the press box that thinks he has a lot of potential, and there's certain sections of the media, myself and Andrea included, that do not think he has a whole lot of potential. So let's dive into this. Here, do you see Chris Henderson getting rid of Robbie Robinson and Nick Marsman? Let's assume that he means for next season. Dos Knows. Let's assume that Dos Knows means for next season. I say yes. Nick Marsman, definitely. Robbie Robinson, possibly. But I don't see Robbie Robinson having much of a long future. I think if Robbie Robinson stays, because he has another year on his deal guaranteed, but I don't think he'll be here much longer, because he hasn't shown a whole lot, and I've talked about what I think of him as a player, but just look at the production, take away my analysis or my opinion of him. Just look at analysis of his career to this point, or his time with Inter Miami. He's had moments in bits and spurts, but very inconsistent and also very injury prone, and that's obviously not good enough for a team with aspirations like Inter Miami. So I do think that they'll look to move definitely Marsman, possibly Robinson, but I don't think Robinson is long for Inter Miami. And then an interesting note that I want to add into my final thought is that Robbie Robinson, and this is information, he's dealing with an injury right now, obviously. He's rehabbing in Boston. He's not rehabbing in South Florida. He's not doing, his exercises and his drills under the watchful eye or under the direct eye of Inter Miami's medical team. He is working with a doctor in Boston that he has worked with in the past. And yes, Inter Miami obviously communicates frequently with the doctor to see how Robbie Robinson is doing and, exchange the information that they need to exchange. But Robbie Robinson, interestingly enough, is not in South Florida training here, or rehabbing here, like, other players have when they've had injuries. Whether it's Breck Shea, whether it's Ian Frey, Leonardo Campana. Obviously a bit of a different type of injury, but worth noting, Robbie Robinson's in Boston, not in South Florida. So, you could read something into that if you would like. Whether, he's truly invested in being in South Florida, truly invested in being with Inter Miami. I think it's a fair conversation to have. But anyway, that is information. He is in Boston, not in South Florida, not in Fort Lauderdale. Jose, do you see Chris Henderson getting rid of Robbie Robinson and Nick Marsman?
What's the contract situation for Nick Marsman? Is he out of a contract this year?
I believe he still has a contract.
Yeah, I think that's what I thought. If he still has a contract, he'll be staying. I think he'll stay. About Robinson, they might be looking for they might be already looking for a team for him, but I don't see a big list of teams waiting for a response on what's required for Robbie Robinson to leave Miami and move on. I just think Robbie Robinson at this point, hasn't shown enough, and I think the development part, it's going to be really hard for him, and because I haven't seen much, honestly. He's the same player that stepped on the field for the first time, and we saw something from him. At least he was energetic, and he continues to be energetic, but no football at all. Just energy, runs a lot, no football. So it's going to be hard for him to get a spot in Inter Miami. The way things are right now, with the way the players are performing, I can't imagine Robbie Robinson starting at any point. And I'm assuming things will get better next year, so it's going to be even harder for him. So I don't know, maybe he gets the shot in USL League One or something like that to try to get the career back on track. But I don't see him in Inter Miami for too long.
Andrea.
I didn't want my final thought to be about Robbie Robinson, Franco. I'm going to have a word with you after, but it is what it is. I definitely think Inter Miami should move on from Robbie Robinson. If Chris Henderson doesn't do it, I guess he's not doing a good job because of all the things that you both have said until now, and also because he doesn't bring anything to the locker room. You're talking about he's doing rehab in Boston instead of being here with his teammates when they're fighting to get to the playoffs, when they're fighting to survive, when they were fighting to survive. He's not here. Yes, we've seen players go and do the rehab in their countries, in their hometowns, or whatever you want to call it, but they come back to be with the team, to be responsible, to have duties. So when his teammates see that, I guess he's not very liked in the locker room because he doesn't put the passion, he doesn't put the commitment like all of them do. I've seen Ian Frey every day that I go to cover this team. I've seen Ian Frey.
To be fair, hold on. To be fair, Ian Frey is a South Florida native, so that's just to be fair.
Yeah,
but Breck Shea, I use Breck Shea as a better example because he's here.
That is what I was going to say. Yeah, but it doesn't matter where you're from. But Breck Shea is here. Ian Frey is here. Karen Gibbs was here. He didn't go back to England. He went to visit his family and came back. But Nick Marshman was here also. He went to visit his family, but he came back. Yeah. And Robbie Robinson has been gone since he got injured. So where is the commitment? Where is the commitment not just to the team, but to your teammates that need your support in this important moment that the team is leaving? So I guess if Chris Henderson doesn't get rid of him, it's going to be a fail from his part. And with Nick Marshman, I guess he will, if he has a contract, he will stay. I think he's comfortable here. Yes, he would like to be a starter, but it doesn't get any better than living in Miami, training here. And he's already been a couple of years here in South Florida, so I don't think he wants to leave.
I'll just add this. Nick Marshman is on a guaranteed compensation per the MLS Players Association of $587,000, or approximately $587,000. For a backup keeper, that's a good chunk of change. So I think if Calendar's the guy, which it looks like he is going forward, yes, they'll need a number two. But I don't think you need a number two that makes up that much money, especially when you're still dealing with the sanctions that Inter Miami has. So I think they look to move Nick Marshman on. And I think Nick Marshman, when it's all said and done, he will want to be playing. He'll want to be playing. So I think this will probably be his last year, given where we stand today, the direction things are headed in today. For Robbie Robinson, again, I agree with Jose. I think he said it perfectly. There's not a lot of football there in him. He's more of a physical specimen than he is, technically talented as a footballer or as a professional soccer player. But I think there's a chance they keep him because if he has another year on his contract as part of his initial deal, since he's a member of Generation Adidas, it doesn't count against the cap. So essentially the Inter Miami could have him on the books for no cap hit for another season. So that could be a reason why they keep him. But again, I don't think he'll be around much longer in South Florida because he just hasn't been able to put it together, hasn't been able to stay healthy, and there are definitely questions, at least from the outside, and definitely from our part in our seats, about his commitment, and this injury is one of the reasons why we have those questions. But anyway, let's leave it there for the Q&A session and this week's show. We'll be back again next week to continue to dive into Inter Miami season and see how their playoff push goes. So, for Jose Armando, for Andrea Yanez, I am Franco Panizo. You have been listening to Miami Total Futbol Radio. And we'll talk to you guys again